Welcome to the Master Passive Income Show. My name is Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you learn how to quit that JOB, that just over broke job, by investing in real estate so you never ever have to work a job again. Today, I'm super pumped to bring on a friend of mine who spoke at the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference this year. Is speaking again. He is actually successfully unemployed, and he's like a twin. We're the twins. We got beards and the successfully unemployed shirts on right now in the interview. But he's going to share with us how we can, it's not just networking that helps you in your businesses, which networking absolutely does, but there's something creative that you can do. And this is something I've been doing since 2017. I have my own podcast. In fact, I have 3 podcasts, but with that, I meet so many fantastic people and my businesses get better. My investing gets better. I get so many people that want to invest with me, but I am so excited to have a friend of mine on, Mike Cavaggioni, on the show. Mike, thanks so much for being here, man.
Dustin, greatly appreciate you having me on your show, man. This is a real treat for me.
It is awesome having another person that invests in real estate as well as is a podcaster. In fact, the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference that I put on in March, it'll be in May of 2024, or sorry, 2023 is May. And what was great was the reason why RubeCon came about was because of my podcasting. Like, honestly, it's because of my podcasting, because I've met so many awesome expert investors and learning about what they do. And then with my audience and their audiences, I said, and I literally called up all my friends like you, and I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. What do you think about this? And like dominoes, everybody said, yes, we want to do that. You know, it's basically a conference that's a no sales pitch conference. Most conferences for real estate, they say, now run to the back and go give us $20,000. We don't do that. We're all about helping people. But it was because of the podcast and helping people and getting to know more people. That's how we have Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, how we met, which is super phenomenal. So tell us a little bit about you and how you're investing, but also you're successful employee. You just got out of the military, which I appreciate you serving our great country, but it's great having you. I want people to get to know who you are.
Yeah, Dustin, I appreciate it, man. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, now living on Oahu, Hawaii. So from one island to another, right? But two totally different places, right? But yeah, I actually spent 15 years in Virginia during my time in the Navy before I came out here to Hawaii to finish up my career. So I did 20 years in the Navy, retired. I was enlisted for 9.5 years, then commissioned as an officer for my final 10 years. And it's just been a really fantastic ride. And one of the things I started doing near the end of my time in the Navy is I said, I got to do something different because my pension's not going to be enough. There's got to be something else because I don't really want to do the standard thing I see people in the military do is they retire and then they go get that government job and then they just get sucked right back into it. And I'm like, I want to kind of detach myself from the government once I retire because I already did 20 years working for the government. So let's do something different. Let's do something more fun. I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. My dad had his own business. My uncle had his own real estate business. And so that bug has always been in the back of my head. So near the end of my time, I said, I became an accidental landlord when I was 23 years old. And it was a pretty rough experience, and it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But I said, you know what? Let's give this another go. Let's give it another shot. I started listening to Bigger Pockets. I started listening to other podcasts like yours, and just meeting people that are investing. And I ran into a buddy of mine that we were stationed on the Theodore Roosevelt together, and he had a great portfolio already. I think at the time, him and his wife had 28 doors. And they said, hey, Mike, why don't we have lunch and go over this stuff and just kind of talk about it and see like where your head's at. And I said, well, this is great because the real person we need to sell on this is my wife, because she's the one that keeps bringing up what happened back in 2008 2009 timeframe when we bought our first home. So so this worked out really good. So I bought my friend's lunch. We went there. They showed me and my wife their portfolio and how much each asset was cash flowing. And it was just like, whoa, like mind blowing, right? We were like, this is a real thing. This is a tangible thing that we can obtain, right? If we put our mind to it. Now, I had already looked up a couple deals and I brought them with me and I said, hey, I asked my friends, can you guys run these numbers with me? Tell me if I'm doing this right, all that. And then my wife kind of gave me the side eye and she's like, what, you were looking this stuff up? And then, she was also looking up deals and she won't tell you that. But we both found some pretty good deals, small multifamily, like duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes. And we kind of narrowed it down to these two duplexes. And my buddies helped us run the numbers, and either one of them would have been a good deal. So we picked one, we stuck it out, we put an offer in, got it accepted, got it under contract, and then just started moving forward. The funding process was a little more painful than I expected it to be, because the lender I was working with told me, "Oh yeah, we have this loan program where you just got to put 15% down and you're good," right? And then like 3 days before closing, he hits me up and says, "Hey Mike, I know I told you 15%, but I didn't realize this was a multifamily property. So we actually need 25%. So do you have that, the other 10% that you could put down?" I said, "Well, actually, no, I don't. You saw all my financials. I gave you everything." I said, "Let me figure this out." So I did a credit card advance and I borrowed from my thrift savings plan, and I freaking made it happen. Right. So we got the deal done. And we closed on it in February of 2020. So keep that date in
Right,
mind, because I
yeah,
told you what happened
right
with our
before
first
COVID, yeah.
accidental one, right? So what happens the next month? The world effectively ended. And I have a tenant that lost his job and can't pay rent. And I said, "Oh, great. Someone's telling me that real estate's just not my thing." But we persevered and pushed through. My downstairs tenant was a Section 8 tenant, and that actually covered our mortgage and pretty much all of our expenses. So we were staying afloat, right? I found a program, got the guy involved in it. It was a rent repayment program. They actually back paid all this guy's back due rent and late fees. So we wound up by the end of that year cash flowing $950 a month off of our first deal. So we were very happy about that. We wound up selling it because the market shifted. And I was like, you know what, we can get a really good profit. And I'm kind of tired of this headache already. Being in the military, I wasn't allowed to fly off island during COVID. So I couldn't even go out there to do anything. So anytime there was an issue, I was doing everything sight unseen, over the phone, with pictures, and it just got to be a little bit too much for me. I was like, I need to go out there and put boots on the ground. But I wasn't able to do that. So we wound up selling that. We took that money and got involved in real estate syndications. And I said, I like this a little bit better for me, because I was so busy with the Navy, and this was a more passive way of investing. So that's actually how I got into real estate syndications. But that's pretty much how I got started into real estate. Like I said, the bug was always in the back of my head, but as I was nearing the end of my career, I said, I got to do something a little bit different, because I don't want to work for the federal government once I'm done with my time in the Navy. So,
Yeah, and I hopefully, I mean, it seems like your wife's now a believer. That's for sure. I mean,
oh yeah,
there's a
100%.
way to, yeah, there's a way to do it right. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it wrong, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to have to go through a lot of pain in order to finally do it right. But real estate investing is not new. It's been around for, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of years, probably a long, long time, a very long time, and people have been successful ever since. And so, if you know the right way to do it, you're going to be very, very successful. Now, I love what you're going to be talking about at RubeCon, and I wanted to bring you on so we can share with the audience, with my audience, that at RubeCon, we're going to have so many great speakers, and obviously you're one of them. And I love that you're in the military. We're also doing the Military Wealth Builders track. Is basically, eventually, I'd like to have it be its own like entire day on military, helping the military. If you're active, if you're a veteran, really, you do this real estate investing thing. In fact, it's so great. If you're in the military, you should absolutely be investing in real estate. And so you're going to be helping with that, which is the Military Wealth Builders track as well. But you're also going to be sharing how it's really networking on a grander scale, in my opinion, because I was blessed to just hit a million, actually like a couple months ago, but a million downloads from my podcast. And then,
Congratulations. That's amazing.
yeah, thanks, man. I didn't think I'd get 10 downloads, let alone a million. Now we're at like 1.1 million. I mean, it's exponentially growing, which is a blessing. But with that, like more and more people know. The biggest thing about me becoming a real estate investor, and what made me become more successful faster, was when I started telling everybody, when I really started sharing everybody that, yes, I'm an investor, not necessarily having a podcast, but sharing the word, getting the word out that more people know that I'm an investor. That's when people said, "Hey, I have this property. Would you want to buy it?" Or, "Hey, I need to rent a property." Or even better, "Hey, I have this money. Can I invest with you and buy properties?" I'm like, absolutely, we could talk about that. But then creating a podcast, you not only get more your name out there more about being an investor. That's definitely one, but the type of people that you meet, like I said with RubeCon, it came about because I met so many great expert investors and said, hey, let's get everybody together and help each other out. So tell me about your experience in, like, not just why you started the podcast, but get to the understanding of the podcast and how that has changed the trajectory for your real estate investing.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that question, Dustin. And very similar to what you've experienced with your podcasting journey, right? Now, I didn't start the podcast for these reasons. As a matter of fact, I had a buddy of mine twist my arm and basically say, hey, this blog that you have with Average Joe Finance is talking about how you got out of debt and bought your home in Hawaii and then started investing again. He's like, that's really awesome, and that would be a great podcast. Like, you should do that, even if it's just you talking about what you're doing. And I said, I'm really busy with the Navy. Maybe when I retire, it's something I can consider, right? So, a little more arm twisting, and my buddy pretty much got me locked in. But he was running a successful podcast at the time, talking about resiliency and just like mental strength and fortitude. So I really liked his podcast. I liked his format. I liked the way he had his discussions and described his stories. And I said, that it's pretty much just being a really good storyteller or interviewer. I was like, I think I could do that. So I said, all right, you know what? You twisted my arm enough. But if I'm going to do it, I want to do at least one episode a week. So that's what I committed myself to. And I did not realize what type of commitment that was. Because even one episode a week, it is a lot of work, depending on how much care and effort you want to put into it. But for me, I'm a big pauser. You probably hear it while I'm talking to Dustin right now. Sometimes I'll just stop and I'll say or and I got to think for a second, right? But with that being said, I would always, like, when I was doing my podcast, I would like say, okay, I need to pull these pauses out. I need to pull these ums out. And I'm sitting here just going through 8 hours of editing a week. And I'm like, I don't have the time to do this. And it was really taxing and mentally tough for me to continue doing the podcast that way. But I did persevere for 6 months doing that before I realized I need to outsource and do something different. So I did. I hired an editing team and kind of just was able to wash my hands and walk away from it a little bit. And that was super helpful. I also noticed that's when my downloads increased as well, because I feel like once I stopped caring so much what I sounded like and just focused on the interview and having the conversation, it completely changed the trajectory. Now, let's get into what some of these conversations were, right? I started interviewing real estate investors, day traders, folks in crypto and NFTs, and I still don't know a damn thing about those things, but I'm learning, right? And that's one of the selfish things that you get to do as a podcaster, is learn from the guests that you bring on. I would have never really gotten into multifamily syndications if I didn't interview people and talk about it and really understand it. I've gone to a couple presentations. I've gone to a couple meetups about it. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. But when I sat someone down and got to ask them the questions that I needed to ask, that I needed to know, again, the selfish thing you get to do as a podcaster, it really helped my understanding and made me feel a lot more comfortable and confident in that asset class, right? So, and then I realized something. By me asking these questions and saying, okay, hey, explain this to me like a fifth grader. And even if I knew this stuff now, I said, this needs to be the theme, right? Because my audience, I mean, the name of the podcast is Average Joe Finances, right? We cater to the average Joes and average Janes out there. So I think it's important to keep it at that level. Like, hey, talk to me like I'm a fifth grader. Put it to me in terms that I'll understand. Hey, what is a KPI, right? People listening to my show doesn't understand that, a KPI means a key performance indicator, right? So a lot of times people will just talk in acronyms. I know when I've had military members on, like, and we're talking shop and we're dropping all these acronyms, every now and then I'll pause for a second and say, hey, this means this and this means that, because I don't want my audience getting lost and saying, I'm going to listen to this. It's just military jargon and I don't understand. And then they turn it off, right? So I want to make sure that I'm creating a product that people can really listen to and understand and absorb it. Now, the other benefit that I've realized by doing the podcast, not only did I get to ask the questions that I wanted to ask and get the information that I needed, but I also got to meet some amazing people. Perfect example, Dustin, I met you. I had you on as a guest on my show, and we were just chatting. And afterwards, it wasn't even really like a thing until after the podcast. And you were like, hey Mike, you wanna come be a guest speaker at RubeCon? And I'm like, oh, I've never done that before, but sure, why not? I like to talk. I'm an Italian kid from New York. I can't shut up, right? So and then I got to do that, and it was a great experience. I got to meet some even more amazing people at your conference. And I got to say, guys, RubeCon is the place to be if you're a real estate investor, especially if you're a new real estate investor. And I'll never forget one thing that you said when you opened up, Dustin. You had said that, hey, I don't care who you are in this room. I don't care how many deals you have. I'm going to ask you all one question. Are you a real estate investor? If you are, raise your hand. And then you see some people raise their hands. He's like, no, 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 no. I want all of you to raise your hand, because if you're in this room, you're a real estate investor. All right. If you're just learning how to do it, if you're just getting started, it doesn't matter. You're making that commitment to be a real estate investor. So lots of respect to you for that, man. I feel like you really got everybody pumped up. Everyone I was talking to was like, man, like I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this. But even after the first 5 minutes of sitting down and Dustin giving the intro, I'm ready to like absorb as much information as possible. So seriously, kudos to you for that. Now, that's just one example, but I'll give you another one that I was just sharing with you before we hit the record button. Is I have to take a trip to, back to the mainland, back to New York to go see family, and getting my animals like pet sat in my house, house sitting and all that stuff has always been very difficult for me to do. Well, I had a guest on my show not too long ago that is like a professional house sitter. She does that to travel the world. And I reached out to her and said, hey, here's my situation. I kind of got a short fuse trip in 2 weeks. I need to, figure this out. Can you come out here and house sit for me? She's like, well, those dates don't work for me, but here's the resource you need. Right. And I went and created an account on this website called Trusted House Sitters, put my stuff on there. And within 3 hours, I had 16 saves, 3 people reaching out saying, I can do the job. Right. And we sat there and screened them, and we found the perfect person to come out here. And she will be out here next week hanging out with my pets while me and my family go travel back to New York to go see family. So this is something that I got because I have a podcast. And I'm not saying that it's, like any type of privilege or anything. What I'm saying is the benefits that I was able to reap from just having a podcast, right? So I'm sowing my seeds, and now I get to harvest and collect those fruits, right? So it's, I don't know. I can't really describe just how awesome it's been. Deal flow. My inbox gets overloaded with deals that are coming up and different things like that, and all from people that I've had on my show. So I have no shortage of, when I have capital ready to deploy somewhere, I have no shortage of deals that I could invest in. So those are
Absolutely. And
just
on
some of the
top of
little
that,
things, Dustin.
yeah, and on top of that, I mean, I get, and I'm sure you get people that want to invest. They don't necessarily have the time, but they might have the means, which is financially. So you can work together with them to take down deals, which is great. But I love that you made one point that was huge, is that if you want to learn from anybody, now I'll be completely honest. I don't go and get coffee with people. I get like literally all the time, from DMs on Instagram to whatever. Hey, can I pick your brain? I'm like, it costs a lot of money to pick my brain. So no, you can't. I don't say that. I try to be more polite and say, but I have my family. I want to be with them. And I have my students who really, they deserve my time because they pay for my time. And so I do reserve my personal time without, charging for anybody at my church. Like if they want discipleship, if they want to just meet and talk, like I do give my time out. But for people that they say, oh, I listened to your podcast and I want to take your time. Like, we could definitely talk about how that could work out. But if you have your own podcast and you say, hey, Dustin, I want you to, can you come on my podcast, share with my audience? I'll ask you questions. I'll be like, absolutely. I'll help you out in that regard, because it's a give and take where I'm actually able to help more people and get more people get to know me. But then you at the same time can be like, Dustin, here are my questions. Like this is better than, for me, better than a cup of coffee. I've even had people say, hey, let me just pick your brain. I'm like, you're not even going to buy me coffee? Like, that's kind of rough. Like, you should at least do that. Should be a give and take with that. But I've been on lots of podcasts, and it's because they say it's like a win-win. Let's be reciprocal and help each other out. Now, it seems like, because you said that it really helped your audience, or your podcast, and obviously your audience grew when you started hiring out or getting other people to edit the podcast. I'll be completely honest and say, I actually, both of my shows, Successfully Unemployed and Master Passive Income, I used to edit them literally up until like myself, up until literally like maybe 2 months ago. Now,
Oh,
like I still
wow.
do it, but I don't now. I hired my daughter who now does it. I pay her, I don't know, like literally $2 an episode. If she does it right, it's $2. If she doesn't do it right, it's $1. She's younger. She's 14 years old. I'll definitely pay her more. Anyways, long story short, having somebody edit your podcast is so awesome. It's so much better. I mean, even though I enjoy doing it, it's easy for me to do it. But what does that? It frees, or what it does is it frees up my time to then invest in more real estate or help coach more people. That's just that much time, because the time is the only commodity that we always spend and we can never, ever get any more of. But what we can do is utilize other people's time, pay them well, which obviously, and I won't tell you what I actually pay my daughter, but that's just her it's not her allowance or her inheritance, which will be much more substantial than $2, but I'm helping her to realize, hey, you got to work and you make money. Like, just because you're in this family, you're not going to be making, you're not going to be a trust fund baby, is what it's going to say. All that to say, tell me about the idea of starting your podcast. If we're going to start the podcast, obviously the equipment and stuff, we can learn all that stuff. But really, the reason why you do a podcast is to gain an audience. How do you figure out what type of audience to go after, even possibly even naming your show? Like, if we're going to start our own, outside of getting the equipment and just starting, how do we make sure we're going to do the right podcast?
Yeah, great question, Dustin. So, what you need to figure out is who is your audience, right? You have to build your podcast listener avatar, right? So, who is it? For me, it's the average Joe. They're between 25 and 35 years old. I do have older people that listen to my show as well, but usually it's somebody that's in a profession or working in a corporate job, working in that 9 to 5, and they've got credit card debt, they've got whatever issues they have going on, personal loans and different things, hurdles that they have to overcome to get themselves debt free and then figure out what they want to do. Or it's somebody that has paid off their debt and now they're looking to start investing and figuring out a good way to essentially either retire early or make sure that when they do retire, that they can retire comfortably and not go off of the standard, typical American dream where you think, if I work in this corporate job for 20, 30 years, I can retire comfortably at 65. And then you realize afterwards that you did not save up enough money, right? So that's my avatar, right? That's my target. That's who I go after. So once you have that established, right, then you can start tailoring your podcast itself to that. Now, I was lucky. I figured all this stuff out after the fact. I had already started the podcast. I wasn't even looking to make this like a big thing or grow it. I was like, I just wanted to talk, right? And see who would listen. And, you know, what I realized as I grew is I kind of lucked out with the name, right? I started Average Joe Finances as a blog. The funny thing is I started it because that domain name was available. That's how I got the name. I said, oh, let me think of something clever, a blog that I'm going to talk about personal finances. And I was like, let's try Average Joe Finances. And the domain name was available. And I said, okay, bought it. And that was that. So, I mean, now you guys all know how Average Joe Finances started. There's the transparency piece. Don't unsubscribe. But but yeah, so
I love
figure out
it.
figure out who your target audience is, right? So now if I had to start over and do it all over again, that's what I would do first. I would sit down and say, who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to impact? Who do I want to learn from? Right? Who do I want to network with? You could have a podcast talking about movies or a TV show. I mean, if I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon or all that stuff, right? But the guy who started that podcast just started it because he wanted to talk about the show, and now HBO sponsors him. So it's things like that find something you're passionate about. For me, I'm passionate about becoming financially independent and helping others do that as well. I've been able to get financial coaching clients through my podcast. I've gotten real estate clients through my podcast because I'm also a real estate agent out here in Hawaii. I've had people reach out to me, say, hey, I'm moving to Hawaii. I've listened to your show. I know you're an agent out there. Can you help me out? Sure can. Right. So things like that, you might not realize these small, subtle things that you can benefit from just from having a podcast talking about something that you're passionate about. So figure out your audience, figure out your passion, right? Well, actually figure out your passion first, then figure out the audience of who's going to listen to that, right? and then go out there and just start making it happen. If you're going to do interviews, find the right people in that niche that you want to interview, right? If you're just going to do a solo storytelling podcast, that's great too. Have it all planned out before you start. Don't just hit the record button and say, today I'm going to talk about, you're going to get caught up, and it's because you can be wasting your time and getting very frustrated. That's how I started my podcast. Trust me. I said, I'm just going to hit record and just start talking. Oh, what a mistake that was when I first started. So if you go listen to the first couple episodes of mine, you'll see the difference.
Noticeably different
from then
too.
To now, right? It's night and day. So yeah, those are the pieces you need to figure out before you get started.
Yeah, I love that. And what's great too is now, because Master Passive Income, the podcast, it's getting more downloads, more people are into it, and it's showing on the charts, which is really, really good. Like if you search on an iPhone for real estate investing, apparently I come up like in the first screen. Like there's bigger pockets than mine. I'm like, well, I'm blessed. Praise the Lord that it comes up.
Congratulations,
now,
man. That's fantastic.
I have friends like, Seth Williams from RE Tipster. He goes, how'd you do that? I'm like, I don't know. I just keep podcasting. I just keep trying to do my best. But what's great now too, on top of that, I get people that want to sponsor the podcast. Now I don't take lots of sponsors. I don't take them. Like you guys don't ever hear sponsors because I want to just help and I want to give it out. But there's so many, we could talk about so many benefits of podcasting. In fact, the reason why I have 3 podcasts is because I love it so much, because it's so much fun. But man, Mike, I am so glad that you're going to be at the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference. And on top of that, if anybody wants to come, you're going to be hanging out with us. We have literally 35 speakers who are expert. Most of them have their own podcasts and YouTube channels, and they're expert coaches as well. But if anybody wants to get 10% off your ticket, use the promo code podcast. It'll get you 10% off the ticket. The link will be in the description as well as the promo code. But man, Mike, I want people to check out Average Joe Finance. Tell people how they can find you and reach out to you.
Yeah, so I'll make it very simple. I have one link that will take you to all of them. It's like the one link to rule them all. And that's www.themikecav.com. It was mikecavaggioni.com, and it'll take you to that website. But a lot of people have a hard time spelling my last name. So just make it easy for all of you, themikecav.com.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mike. And everybody check out his podcast, the Average Joe podcast. I was on there as well, telling my story and just trying to encourage people, as many people as we can. That's the reason why I brought Mike to RubeCon, is because we just want to help people. All right, Mike, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dustin. This was a blast. Aloha.